why build these tools? I wanted to explain why I've been working so hard on these tools because I've come to a lot of conclusions over the last decade or so which all feed into this project. So I'm going to lay out the set of beliefs that this is all built on. Now, I don't see a belief system as some part of my identity that I have to defend at all costs, but more as something that I, need to continuously evolve. So I might state things in unyielding terms, but I'm always looking for a better perspective. So my first belief is, in an internet age, videography equals visibility. When I was running my live music night back in 2013, I saw a lot of really interesting artists doing really interesting stuff. And the only difference I felt between them and some viral internet success stories seemed to be that they didn't have a good video showing their work. As a musician, I was reluctant at the time to add camera gear to my already chronic music gear acquisition syndrome. But I did do a spreadsheet at the time. I was like, okay, if I get a camera, then I can start shooting this stuff and get it on the internet properly. And so I did bite the bullet, and that was a whole new thing to learn. The second belief that's part of this is planning is essential when it comes to videos and presentations. So for a long time, I had a bad habit of sort of winging it. So if I'd give a talk at work without practicing it, or I'd go live and start playing music with no plan, and sometimes I'd get away with it, but often I'd crash and burn. When I started making YouTube videos, I tried to put something together from footage I'd collected with no plan, but I quickly realized this was an incredibly slow and unpredictable way to work. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel when it comes to filmmaking, so I learned how to use Final Draft Pro to write a script. I wasn't writing dialogue between different characters or anything, but it was still great to have a standard structure and standard tool to work with. And this is what I'm talking about. So here's what a script looks like. You've got your sort of you've got your location stuff up here. I'll use this. Then you've got the sort of name of the person talking. The dialogue goes here, and you've got your action. This is what's happening, and the things that happen, like disgust pulls a lever. So this is sort of the basic script. And if you write it like this, a page is 1 minute of content. And I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I learned how to do this. And mine was more like put this screen on, and it was all just me doing voiceover. But anyway, it's really tempting to jump straight into a video project without a plan, especially now that you can generate little clips with AI. But I've learned the hard way that if you don't start with a decent script, then you're just not going to make a decent video. Unless you're John Wilson and that's your whole style. So when it comes to presenting or making a video, I think you need to start with your script. It's infinitely easier to rewrite a draft of a script than to fix a video that isn't working. And I think for the same reason, a script is better than a deck. It's better to start with the words and ideas you want to express as a script rather than trying to build a slide deck before you know what you want to say. If you start fiddling with slide layouts before you've written your talk, then I just think you're going to get nowhere fast. Next, when producing video, I believe that working on a desktop is better than working on a phone. So apps like TikTok are incredible, but if you want to put together a script, you need to be able to type and edit on a real keyboard. And then when it comes to shooting, you're also going to be able to use a much better camera and microphone. So these iPhone apps are brilliant, and they've got their whole ecosystems, but there are limitations that they lend themselves to certain kinds of content. I think we can do something I think it's easier to work on a computer at the end of the day. The next thing I believe is that iPad and iPad and Apple Pencil for digital artwork, I just really believe this is the best thing ever. So before Apple Pencil, I tried loads of weird stylus. As soon as touch screens came out, I was like, brilliant! I can actually draw on a screen. But before the Apple Pencil, I tried loads of different weird stylus things with it had a transparent this sort of transparent tip, and then the ball, and there was a pen like that, and that would kind of simulate the finger, but you'd be able to see through it because it was transparent, and so you could draw through it. But it was weird, and then you could get special gloves to do palm rejection so that you didn't keep drawing with your hand. So, it was all very janky compared to what we have now from Apple, which is just super responsive, really pleasant to use. So that's why I made Video Pencil, so you can quickly sketch things out on the iPad. The next belief is I really believe that live, if you can record something in one take, it's going to be better than something that you edit together from multiple takes. This is because basically video editing is an art form, and it's a skill that takes years to develop. You have to make footage flow. You have to learn, right, in an edit, in a tool, how to make footage flow naturally. You have to develop this intimate relationship with like mouth sounds and breathing and pacing and repetition and silence, right? It's a technical craft that requires you to become hyper conscious of the subtleties of human communication. But like talking, on the other hand, we can all talk. Like if you've been a teacher for 10 years, you know how to explain something, and you don't have to fixate on the gaps between your words or how your breathing sounds. And I want my tools to create a window through which you can just be yourself and do your thing without having to be an expert in video editing. And also like save so much time, because even once you are good at video editing, it's still just, compared to doing a live take and then you know that that felt good and you can watch it back and it's done, when you're editing video, you've got to keep watching. It takes the time that it takes, right? The length of the footage, you've got to watch it over and over and over again. And there's just no way to speed that up. So it's just massively time consuming. And I just think it's just like better to do things live for most of the kind of communication that we're doing here, than to try and make some sort of edit of it. I'm talking about sort of solo content creators, essentially, like myself, where we want to communicate something, but we don't want to also have to be an expert in videography, right? So I think this feels more contentious than it might have 3 years ago before we started giving tools to machines, but I truly believe that tools are for humans. I think that a good tool should free us from mechanistic, repetitive tasks and amplify our humanity. So what does that look like? That means using a teleprompter, which lets you deliver directly to camera without having to spend hours learning it, but not like an auto-scrolling teleprompter. So, like when you're working alone, you need to be in control of the teleprompter. So if it starts scrolling too fast or slow, then the computer is now driving you. The machine is in charge now, and that is just not, for me, that's just wrong. If you're a newsreader, then you have a human expert in control of your teleprompter, which is a completely different thing to what we're doing here. Another form that takes is like AI script writing. So writing is an art form. It's a deeply personal human activity. Good writing is hard. But even if you write badly, this has infinitely more value than something that comes out of a large language model. LLMs are prediction machines, so they write the most predictable thing. And what is the point of that? Like, who would ever want to listen to somebody saying the most predictable thing? That's the opposite of storytelling. That's why it's slop, right? And honestly, like the same goes for all AI generated content. Like if it's just the script or if it's the visuals or whatever, it's just going to be a big nothing burger, or at best it's going to just be the plagiarized content of a Wikipedia article. The last thing I'm going to say is I honestly believe that Apple makes the best tech. I switched to a Mac for programming in about 2007, and after using Windows for like at least a decade, and I just never looked back. Because it's a Unix-based operating system, instead of having to edit the registry every time something didn't work, I could just like tweak a text file. I could run music software on it without having to manage my hardware the whole time, change the buffer size. I could have like multiple music applications hammering the sound card without any issues. The video pipeline was privileged in the system so that it just like videos just played. It wasn't like dependent on what else was going on. They privileged that in the pipeline, and the rendering was done on the GPU, right, rather than Windows, which is the CPU. So like they could do all these animation effects that you just couldn't dream of on Windows. So it was just really a breath of fresh air. In 2010, I joined the design team at Ubuntu, which is an open source free operating system that wanted to compete with Windows and macOS. And the deeper I got into that project, the more I respected the decades of foundational work that had gone into macOS. Like Linux had no stable application development APIs, like frameworks to build on. You just had to sort of like choose some packaging and like tie them together, and you couldn't rely on those staying the same between different versions. You couldn't build good software because it would just break at random on the next system update, right? Meanwhile, Apple's SDKs were so stable that they could swap out a Motorola CPU for an Intel CPU without like visibly affecting the design. That's how deep that tech went, and that's how good the abstraction was on the user-facing software. And that's before we even get into design. Like the trouble we had getting developers to work with even the most basic design guidelines, to see like a consistent But, with Apple, to then see a consistent design language between desktop, mobile, and like physical retail spaces, just absolutely like beyond possible, like with what we were doing. So, Apple's lead is not superficial and it's not tribal, which I keep hearing these hack writers say. It's like not some like, it's really based on technological expertise and vision, right? And that's why it's possible for a solo developer to do so much on these platforms. Like I wouldn't attempt anything like this on Windows, Android, or Linux because I'd have to reduce the scope of my ambitions by like orders of magnitude. And I want to say, like, I think some of my friends were kind of like Android fans back even at the start because of the sort of configurability. But like the fact that the software development kit was so open with Apple stuff meant that like I could just make an app to do the thing I want to do if there wasn't one in the App Store. And that was just, for me, like where the flexibility should be, like not just all in like checkboxes and configuration, just give me the tools to build amazing software. And the fact that these SDKs are the same between mobile, desktop now is just like incredible what they've done. So finally, I really believe that real-time is transformative. Like what do I mean by this? I mean that the difference between having software that reacts immediately instead of after like buffering or rendering or after like, half a second unlocks modes of human expression that are otherwise inaccessible. So that sounds pretentious. I just mean like once my transitions in QCam happen in like a couple of milliseconds, then it makes it possible to do things in time with the music. I could like move through things, listen to the beat and do that, or do like comedy with it in a way that you can't if it's going to be like a little bit awkward, a couple, half a second too long. So this is like my goal for QCam, is that like once I've got that soup snappy like to a musical degree, right, then it becomes a new medium. And I think the best tools become mediums. The best tools and platforms become new modes of artistic expression. So my ultimate goal with QCam and everything around it is to unlock new forms of creativity that I just couldn't have predicted. So there we go. I'm sure I'll think of some other stuff once I've uploaded this, but let's talk about this in the comments. Let me know what you think. I just wanted to sort of say where I'm coming from with all this, and also just to get it all on paper, get it all on video so that I can like think about it properly and maybe address something that I just haven't thought about for 10 years. So yeah, maybe I'll make a follow-up soon. But anyway, I'm Michael Forrest. I built all these apps myself. I hope you like them, and please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Give the apps a try.